that it's possible. You can do these things too, because if you're only consuming what's in your environment, if you only know what's in your environment, that's all you're going to know. You're going to be confined and you're going to be limited to certain possibilities and or I should say you'll be limited to certain knowledge and therefore you'll be limited to certain possibilities. Hello beautiful folks, it's the Day J. Welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad to be back. I missed last week's episode of my podcast. If you haven't checked it out, Diaries of an Outcast podcast is on my YouTube channel as well. But yes, I missed that episode last week because life has been lifing. No, seriously, just a lot's been going on in my personal life. I also graduated from a 2-year program. I'm not done yet though. I still am continuing on to earn my bachelor's in psychology. So there's that. And just like the end of the school year was very hectic, a lot of work, very stressful. And I was still filming and whatnot, but like last week was my first week just off of school and I was just working and I really just wanted time to just like recoup and just like clean my room, like organize things and just like rest. And so that's why I took last week off from uploading. But I am back and I'm very happy to be back. I was very excited to film today and I'm very excited to share with you guys what I'll be talking about today. Also, disclaimer, yeah, it's a little weird. I have my microphone on a pick. You might see me from time to time putting my microphone on random objects. That's mainly just because I don't like holding this little tiny microphone. I really actually want like a big microphone and like a whole setup, but like your girl's in college right now and she's broke, so I don't got money for that. So we're just going to make a makeshift little microphone out of various objects we have laying around. Today it's a pick. And so yeah, that's where we're at today, guys. So today, as you can tell by the title, we're going to be talking about how you can grow despite your environment, how you can level up despite your environment, how you can glow up physically, mentally, all of that despite the environment that you are living in. And I want to be very specific. By environment, I don't mean like your friends or like it could refer to like a workplace environment, but mainly I'm just referring to if you are living in a household where the environment is not the best, you don't have like role models around you, it's just not the best environment for you to be in. That's more what I'm referring to, but of course, this can apply to the workplace or just other places, I guess, but mainly I'm just going to be talking about the household because I think a lot of my audience still lives at home with their parents. And so I just really want to come from that perspective for you guys today. If you guys see me looking over or down at my iPad, it's because I have notes. Because if I do not have notes for my videos, I will go on a rant. I'll forget exactly my purpose of the video, and you'll get nothing but a whole bunch of chatter. And I really want to provide value to you guys and really just stay on track of what I'm trying to talk to you guys about. And yeah, so just a little disclaimer there. So today I want to like give an overview of like my story and how I persevered through certain struggles in my life that I have faced and came out on the other end better, stronger, instead of letting those circumstances defeat me and bring me down. Even though some of them did for a certain amount of time, I still ended up being able to get back up and persevere. So I'm not gonna like go into like a lot of detail. I'm just kind of give an overview of like my life. So growing up, at first my parents were very well off. They had great jobs and they were very comfortable. We were able to travel and whatnot. This is really um, before I was born and maybe like a year until I was born. A year until I was born, where this was where like my family was all good. The year I was born, though, my dad was actually diagnosed with cancer, and that changed a lot. My dad had to stop working, obviously, and he just started getting like paid from the government disability. My mom had to cut down on working because she had to take care of my dad. We also me and my sister, she had to take care of us. He couldn't do it alone, and so that right there is the start of how our financial situation really took a turn for the worst. Took a turn for the worst, and it didn't get better from there, if I'm being honest. So from there, like I said, just things got worse. My mom would have a job here and there, but it was never like a very stable long term job. Um, and so yeah, I just remember, my mom, struggling to pay the bills, struggling to get groceries, struggling to pay for gas money. I wouldn't have like certain clothes or shoes my friends would have in school, or like I used to play sports and whatnot, and I wouldn't have certain equipment my friends would have, certain like athletic accessories, stuff like that. I wasn't going on like trips like my other peers were, certain things like that. One thing that is very, very predominant that I will always remember in my childhood was living in a trailer park. And I bring that up not because living in a trailer park is bad or anything like that. I would live in a trailer park to this day as long as it's a good trailer park and it's nice. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with that. A home is a home. But I just remember getting immensely bullied for living in a trailer park. The trailer park was actually right behind my middle school, and people literally straight up like bullied me, called me trailer park trash, called me poor, called me homeless, called me a bum, like all the names in the book, just because I lived in a trailer. And of course we lived in a trailer because we couldn't afford really much else. That's what we could afford. And you know kids back then, they don't know better for the most part. In my opinion, I feel like um, they don't necessarily understand certain situations, circumstances, and whatnot. And so I don't even like. I'm not even mad at those kids to this day. Like if I saw them, it would be no beef, bro. Like it is what it is. I just hope that they got an understanding that like that was not okay. But anyways, so yeah, I lived in a trailer park, and then um, I then moved to after that, after living in the trailer park, we were actually homeless for a certain amount of time, and I actually ended up living with my mentor that I met through a program back when I was 7. So at this time, I was about 12, and so I knew her really well, and I was very comfortable staying with her. Um, and so yeah, I stayed with her for a couple months, and that was actually very hard for me. Just being away from my parents, from my sister, was very, very hard. Being away from just what I was used to. Although, living at her home was very, very nice and things like that, it still just wasn't, even though I was in this great environment where everything was provided to me, I had a great space, a great everything was great. It was still hard for me to just be the best I could because I knew back in my head that my parents were still homeless. I was worried about them. I was worried about my sister because she was actually pregnant at this time. And so, yeah, I was just very worried for her. But we eventually ended up being able to stay with my auntie for a couple months. So we were all back together. I was sleeping, me and my sister were actually sleeping on a couch, but like, it's crazy because I didn't even like think about it like that. Like, I straight up was like, oh, I got a place to sleep. That's cool. Like, I wasn't bothered at all by sleeping on the couch. Um, I and it's great. Like I had these years that I'm speaking of were like the funnest times in my life. Um, and it's just crazy thinking about all the things that were going on, and I was still able to just be happy, and I was doing really well in school still as well. I've always done well in school, and that's one thing I salute myself for, just being a first generation college student, being that neither of my parents nor my sister even graduated from high school. Um, and I never even thought of it like, oh, I have to finish because they didn't. It was really just something I genuinely wanted for myself. Anyways, I'm kind of getting off track here, but I then ended up moving. We ended up getting a one-bedroom apartment, me and my family. So it was my mom, my dad, my sister, me, our dog, and now my nephew, who was just born, all staying in a one-bedroom apartment. At a very, very just not good apartment. They had roaches, mices, just wasn't good. But again, I was not thinking about those things. I was like, I'm with my family, we got somewhere to stay, we all good. That's all I thought about. Um, I just want to fast forward a bit to when we moved out into the suburbs where I'm at now, into these apartments. Um, our like I mentioned, our financial situation as a family has never really gotten better since that point when my dad was diagnosed. Um, and so with that, I've just gotten really used to money being tight and, just struggling to pay for things, seeing my parents struggle, to come up with like, just money for, like I said, groceries, medications, ways to get to the doctor, for doctor's appointments. And so, all this to say, I think the one thing that has motivated me to keep on track and to just keep doing well in my life, to keep a good head on my shoulders, to have tunnel vision is, it sounds really bad, and I don't mean it in this way. I love them, and I know they know I love them and all of that. I just seeing them, how they were living, struggling. I knew whatever they were doing or whatever they did, I would do the opposite. And that's not to say like, because the main thing, again, I just want to emphasize the main thing that really messed up my parents' financial situation or financial situation is my dad having to quit work and my mom having to cut down on work. But there were also things throughout this time that my parents' choices that they made that probably weren't the best choices. And also just seeing the struggle. I'm just like, I don't want that. So I'm going to do everything in my power. Oops. I'm going to do everything in my power to not be in that situation. And honestly, I'm doing heck of a great job so far. Like I'm doing, again, I love them and I don't mean this in like a derogatory way, like a bad way. Like I'm doing everything opposite from what they have. I graduated high school. I'm going to college. I have internships. I am having connections. I have mentors. None of these things of which my family has. And I'm doing all this, yes, for myself, but also to bring value to them as well, to teach them and to help them, obviously. Um, so yeah, that's kind of just like an overview, and that was very, very broad. Of my kind of life story, the main struggles I've been through. Again, very, very broad. I didn't include everything in there because I'd be sitting here for all day, but um, yeah, I really just feel like knowing what I want for my life and being very, very clear about that, the lifestyle and the life I want to live, the environment I want to be in, being very clear about that and knowing what I want in those aspects has helped me persevere through struggles and help me persevere in an environment that's very hard to persevere in. So now I want to get into the tips, the actual tips of like how to level up despite the environment you're in, despite the people that you're around, because trust me, I know it can be from experience. It can be very, very hard, very, very daunting, very overwhelming, and just very tiring, right? Because depending on your environment, you can either be energized or you can be de-energized. Wait, is that the word? You can either be energized or you can be depleted of energy from your environment. And I mean, just logically, I think it's safe to say that most bad environments, not so great environments, are going to drain your energy, right? So, anyways, let's get into the tips, guys. Okay, guys, my number one tip, the main tip, and the reason why I say this is the main tip is because all the other tips kind of fall under this umbrella is expansion. You need to expand beyond what you know. This means your environment, people, jobs, activities, like everything, you need to expand beyond what you're used to see that there's other possibilities. There's other paths. Paths. There's other ways to go beyond what you are seeing in your immediate environment or the environment, the environments that you're in on a day-to-day basis. So I actually derived this term expansion from the expanded podcast by 2B Magnetic. There are two ladies on this podcast. I can't remember their names. But they talk about the science of manifestation, and a big thing they talk about is expansion. Being that the name of the podcast is expanded, they talk about expansion in this way of like finding people who represent who you want to be, or like, or have certain aspects or maybe things in their life that you want, and maybe just like exposing yourself to them. It doesn't mean like you have to be friends with them, but maybe following them on social media, or just like, whatever. Like following them on social media is a good example of just like expanding your knowledge of things. So for example, I want to be a entrepreneur. I want to do multiple things. I want to be a personal stylist. I want to be a life coach or therapist, a graphic designer. I want to be all these things. And so, with that, knowing what I want to do, and knowing that there's nobody in my environment doing these things or even talking about these things, um, knowing that, I will then go on social media and find people who, a plus is if they look like you, especially if they come from the same background as you. That will help a lot as well. Finding these people on social media and following them and consuming their content to tell your brain, and it's not even on a, I don't think it's on a conscious level, it's probably on a subconscious level, to like tell your brain that it's possible. You can do these things too. Because if you're only consuming what's in your environment, if you only know what's in your environment, that's all you're going to know. You're going to be confined, and you're going to be limited to certain possibilities, and or I should say, you'll be limited to certain knowledge, and therefore you'll be limited to certain possibilities, and you won't even be able to explore all of your capabilities and your interests and your passions if you don't like even know that it's possible, right? So I think expanding your knowledge beyond your environment is so important. And again, all the other tips, the four other tips I'm going to give you guys today, fall under this umbrella of expanding your knowledge and your environment. So another example that of this could be if maybe your home environment isn't great, but your work environment is great, try connecting with people in that environment so that you have a safe environment where you feel good, and it uplifts you and it energizes you, instead of just not putting any energy into that environment. Because I get it, being in a bad environment can be very draining. And so when you get in a good one, you don't even want to put energy into it because you're just so depleted. But I promise you, it's very, very worth it. And that connection and is very worth it. And just having people to look up to and role models and mentors especially is very, very important. So that's tip number one. Let's get into the second tip. So I low-key just mentioned this, but finding mentors or role models, um, or hanging around people that you want to be like in a way. So I don't mean this in a bad way where like you envy them, you want what they have, and you're only being friends with them because they have what you want. I do not mean it in that way at all. Obviously, there has to be a genuine connection there, but I will really recommend just befriending people who are interesting to you and who have skills or just knowledge that you can learn from them, things that you can things that they can bring to the table, right? And it's like, let's be real, like relationships are a two-way street, and I think that a lot of relationships are transactional, if we're just being real. And I think that if you're not bringing anything to the table, if you're not like, yeah, if you don't have your own knowledge, your own skill, your own perspective that could help me, like, I don't know, like, why am I around you? Or like, why, or if on the opposite end, like if you're doing things that I don't agree with, doing things that maybe upset me or that I just think are not right, I'm not going to be around you. Because that's a part of expansion, right? Because if I'm already in a bad environment where I don't have role models or people to look up to, people around me are doing things that I don't agree with, that I don't like, why would I then go outside of this environment and find more people like that? It just makes no sense. So finding people that you look up to, um, if you can get a mentor, I highly, highly recommend. I've had a mentor actually since I was 7. I'm very, very, very blessed for that. I also have, I guess you could say had, because I graduated, a mentor at my school, and I now have a mentor on my target intern team. And so just having, even if it's not like a permanent mentor, maybe it's just a mentor at work, mentor at school, just having that person to guide you and to talk to and to have to get advice from is very, I think, crucial. Because especially, when you just, when you're just becoming an adult, 18 to, I would even go as far to say 30, like 18 to 30 is a very confusing time for a lot of people. And if you come from a background like me, where you don't necessarily have people to look up to, where there's really nobody in your family that you want to be like, it can be very hard and almost discouraging in a way to just like be better and do more and persevere. So, having a role model and mentor is very, very important. Tip number 3 would be to be consuming the right media. So, what I mean by this is cutting out any toxic, bad media. And this can be really hard because, first of all, algorithms will push you on TikTok, it'll push you just like random things most of the time. But I really do believe that you have the ability to consume what you want to consume online. And so, consuming inspiring, uplifting, expanding content, like I mentioned earlier, consuming social media from people who are doing what you want to do, who look like you, who come from the same background as you, is very important. I think if you're only consuming you know, people who are nepo babies and who are just had it from the jump, and they're super successful, if you're only consuming content like that, you're gonna think that like you're doing something wrong, or you're just gonna be comparing yourself to them. And I think just finding people online that come from the same background as you and that look like you is very, very helpful. But along with that, the type of media. So I don't consume any type of media that's like critiquing like physical appearance. I do not play with that ish. I will get triggered like that. And being that I'm already in an environment that is triggering, that can be hard to be in, why would I then go on my phone where I am wanting to like get away from the world and to like feel good? Why am I going on my phone and watching toxic content? And even like, I noticed too, like toxic content can be entertaining. I'm not even gonna deny that, because sometimes I get caught in that too. But even though it's entertaining, subconsciously it can be sending a message or a signal in your head, whatever it may be. It can be multiple things, various things, but I think it could send a multiple a negative signal or message in your head subconsciously. And I just think that if you're already in a bad environment, bro, like consume the most positive impact, or sorry, yeah, positive, inspiring, uplifting content that you can, content that brings you knowledge, content that will help you expand beyond your environment, of course. Gotta get some water, guys. I've been talking for a minute here. All right, tip number 4, which is a very, very important one, is to constantly remind yourself why you're doing what you're doing. So, for example, for me, throughout these couple years of being in college, there was various times where I've genuinely contemplated dropping out and just working full time because financial situations got hard at points, and just wanting to move out of my parents' house, and having my own space. Um, but at those points, at those moments, I really had to be strong and remember, like, no, I genuinely want this degree. It's not for anyone. It's not for show. It's not for bragging rights. I genuinely want this degree, and I know how good I would feel once I earn it. And so let me continue on. And along with that, just reminding myself that college is not just something that I'm just doing because people told me to, or people told me it was the next step on my journey. Like, no, I know and understand that I have options and I don't have to follow this roadmap that people say that you have to follow. Um, it wasn't that. Like, no, going to college is a part of my plan. It's a part of what I want, and reminding myself that throughout these 2 years has been so important. Another thing I would say along with this tip is kind of just tied in with YouTube and creating content, because there's been so many times where I'm just like, maybe I can just skip filming today, even though I wanted to really, really bad. But there would be times where I'd just be very tired from my environment. I'd be drained from my environment, or I'd have to help my family out with something, and I won't have the energy to film. But then I'll be like, no, like, yes, you're tired, but like, this is your creative outlet. This is something you really love doing. And when you're done filming, every time I feel so good. When I'm done editing and when I upload my video, I feel so good. Um, and reminding myself of that in those times has been very, very crucial in me being consistent on YouTube for these last couple months. Um, because back a year ago when I started YouTube, I was not consistent. I was kind of just posting whenever, and that was because I wasn't reminding myself of my why. Um, I wasn't as good as persevering and leveling up despite my environment back then. If I'm being quite honest, back then I wouldn't be equipped to speak on this topic, but I think time goes and I experience some things, and I'm very confident to speak on this. It can be really hard when there's, again, I mentioned this earlier, when there's just no one in your environment that's doing well, or just doing, either that's not doing well, or maybe they're just not successful, or maybe they're doing bad things. It can be so hard to stay focused. Not only because maybe you're worried for them and what they have going on in their life, you're worried for them because of your family, you love them, but also it's just an energy thing. That energy rubs off on you. The energy in the environment genuinely rubs off on you, and again, can just deplete your energy. It can misconstrue your thoughts. It can just, impact you in multiple ways, directly or indirectly. I'm just thinking about living in an environment where, like, people around me were super motivated and they were doing things every day. I would just instantly, in my head, I just get this uplift of like energy, because I'm like, yeah, that would be great. Like, I'd feel just so much more motivated to work and to create. But yeah, just I one thing I will say is just like, if you are in an environment like that where you don't have like role models, people around you, like, expansion, bro. Expansion through social media, through real life. If you have a good work environment, expansion through there. Finding a mentor is very important. But let's move on to the fifth tip. The fifth tip, which is kind of tied in with my last one, is just to remind yourself that there are benefits to what you're doing. Because sometimes the fruits of your labor don't show right away. And I think that's a big thing with college. You can't really, some people work full time. I don't recommend that at all, but some people have to. So it's a hard financial time. It's a time where you don't know, what you're doing. It's work heavy, a heavy workload. It's a weird time with your family. You're transitioning there. You're transitioning with friends, and it's just a very, very hard time. It can feel like, I know for me, it can feel like what I'm doing is just not worth it, or I can sometimes feel like it's just not going to pay off, and I'm doing all this for nothing. And that's I feel just mainly because I haven't seen anyone in my immediate life do what I'm doing and be successful. Um, Although, again, there's people online, and I try to expose myself to them as well, but it's just, obviously, we can be just honest. It's a lot better and just easier for you if that person is in your family, if that person is a parent, right, or is a sibling. Um, And so, like, remind yourself, be very logical about it too, of like the exact benefits that are going to pay off. Like, okay, once I graduate, maybe you have a job lined up and you have a great job opportunity lined up, and that's the benefit. Or, you know, the benefit is just like having, getting this house, this home, and this lifestyle that you want. And I know that's for me, is the benefits of this is like, number one is like gaining certain knowledge that I otherwise wouldn't have gained if I didn't go to college, or if I didn't, like, if I weren't around certain people. But also just like the benefit of having the lifestyle that I want and living the life that I want. um and I remind myself, I think about it every day. I'm a big dreamer. I dream, like, daydream I think every day about just my future and what I want it to look like. And I'm getting kind of emotional right now. I don't know why, but I do think about my future a lot. Um, and I sometimes it's hard to like think about your future when you're in this environment. It sometimes can feel like impossible. It can feel out of reach. Again, that's where that expansion comes in. Um, yeah, trust me, guys. Like I know firsthand. Like it can be so hard to just keep going and to be motivated on a day to day basis. But I promise you, like if you're in this environment, if you continue to expand yourself, if you just continue to persevere, if you have a plan for your life and you stick to the actions in that plan, like you're gonna be successful. You're gonna have everything you want. And this is like I'm speaking to myself at this point as well. Like you're gonna have everything you want. You're gonna live the life you want. And another thing is just like this is not even a part of my notes. I'm kind of rambling at this point, but it can also be hard to level up because you're scared of leaving people behind. I don't think people talk about this enough. And I think when you're not in the position of actually leveling up and actually leaving people behind, you could just be like, oh, like whatever, like they'll be fine, like, and I'll be fine. It's all good. But like when you're really in it and you're actually leveling up and people around you aren't, you genuinely feel like you're leaving them behind. You feel guilty. You feel like you should be taking them along, your family or people that are close to you. You feel like you should be taking them along with you and helping them with everything, but you just can't do that. You have your own life to live. You have your own life path to set up and to live, and your own struggles and things to work through. And that doesn't mean you can't help people. I am all for helping people and equipping people with knowledge, because I'm blessed to have certain knowledge that my family doesn't have and opportunities to have that they don't have. And I will share all of that with them, but I can't hold their hand. I can't guide them on every step. And sometimes I wish I could, but I realize that that's just not realistic. And even if I could, that shouldn't be something I should do because they have to do it on their own. They have to learn on their own. They have to go through trials and tribulations just like I did, just like anyone else has to, right? So I just wanted to put that disclaimer there because that's another aspect of it is like just feeling guilty of growing in an environment where others aren't growing like you are, right? So that brings me to the end of this video. I'm so happy I got to talk to you guys today, being that I missed last week. And there's so much more on this topic I could talk about. And I'm definitely going to touch on this topic in the future because there's so much within it that I could talk about. So yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed all the tips that I gave you guys, and as well as just like a kind of overview of like my life story. Even though I was very broad, very general, I just want to kind of relate to you guys more and be more transparent about how I grew up and what I've been through and how what I've been through, my experience can help you guys. That's really what I'm here for, is coming from this perspective of like struggle and poverty, and that's really the perspective I'm coming through in all of my videos. So once this video is uploaded, a week from the day this video is uploaded, I will have a podcast episode uploaded on my YouTube channel. I don't know what the topic will be yet, but I'll probably make a post on my YouTube channel letting you guys know. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Okay, that's my tune. When I say they shoot, show me room. Like my bitches are coming too.